sexual assault, that it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt, right? If we think about rape, if we think about sexual assaults, a lot of these happen behind closed doors. So how do you prove something that nobody else sees or hears? So maybe Lieutenant Merritt could speak more to this, but how many people, how many individuals, alleged perpetrators get convicted for a crime when it comes to rape?
Then I'd have to go statistically. The problem that I have, and it's always been a problem, is so many people do not report it. In 26 and a half years, I have seen young ladies that want to report it and then felt victimized again and again because they had to go through it all over again because I would talk to them as an officer, the detective would talk to them, then the prosecutor would need to talk to them, and it got to the point where they wanted to shut down because it was just bringing it up over and over again. And each time that they talked about it, it got worse to them. It's, like I said, a lot of times it's a he said, she said. Now, I go back to my training, and like I said, with being a RAD instructor, no is no. And I always used to say this, and I see it a lot where, and I do it with the media, is what's the difference between rape and date rape? You hear date rape all the time. Especially in the college atmosphere time. You hear it. There is no difference. It's a word that was put in front of rape to kind of smooth it over a little bit to me. And like I said, if a young lady is raped, it doesn't matter, because I'm wanting to say it's 93% of the time that rape occurs, the woman knows the person she's raped by. It's not a violent, we're pushing, grabbed in the bushes and clothes ripped off and everything else, right? It's somebody that they know, whether it be in their apartment or somebody else's apartment. And that's the real thing that get it, is because there's so many young ladies that start with it, but then they want to stop it because they're reliving it, and we can't get the help that they need to make sure that they're okay.
So therefore, because it's underreported, most individuals don't report it, that a lot of time it doesn't go to trial, right? So the perpetrators don't get charged. And how many people of the perpetrators, how many of them are really open to engage in some type of research that indicates some kind of efficacy behind the treatment, right? Most people don't want to come out and acknowledge that he or she or they are a rapist, right? So the research therapy, I believe, works. I don't believe in short-term therapy in severe cases. 10 days to me is not long enough, right? But in some cases, therapy does work. It requires longer-term treatment. It requires motivation. And the research is so new that there isn't conclusive evidence because the number of convicted perpetrators are so low. Right? So it's hard to do research and collect data on such low statistical numbers.
It's probably because of the trend of the social trend that's been happening. Slowly, the more that we get educated, the more experiences that we as a social community experiences in time, behavior patterns change, just like our planet's changing, just like how 10, 15 years ago, the internet, the information wasn't as available, so we really didn't know what was really going on, per se, to the magnitude of what we're getting now. So a lot of people get socially peer pressured, and that's what they fear. They don't want that kind of retaliation. That's what I used to experience when I was a younger girl. You say something, you put the person in place, you have to tell them it's unwanted. 90% of the time, if you tell them to stop, they will stop. It's that 10% that they're very aggressive and they just can't, and that's where you need to up it up. And back in the day when this was occurring in my early times in the 90s, the social norm, and it was just a common behavior for people to do that. It was not like a law, but it was socially more accepted. It wasn't like, until a group of people start to file lawsuits. And then people start to fight back. And then when that person, it gives them courage, like you say, that encouragement, that empowerment. And we're living in a time where individualism and individual empowerment is a big thing. Everybody wants to be now, look at me, I'm here, we all have a voice, and we're learning that as a social group. It's a big difference in time. Yes, go ahead.
I mean, the good thing is it's the mentality that everybody's talking about it now, so you can start talking about it. But my 85-year-old mother said, wow, look at these guys in Hollywood. They're just such jerks. I said, Mom, look around you. Every woman has experienced this. Some type of harassment, some type of inappropriate behavior. And mostly, it's in the workplace where you need your job. You got kids to support. There's almost nothing you can do about it because they're not going to believe you anyway. And if they do believe you, they'll win. They have all the money. They have the lawyers. So I think when it becomes this mentality, group mentality, you do feel embarrassed. I 100% agree with you. But it's nothing that is new.
Oh, it's been out for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's nothing new.
Exploitation of everything's been around for a long time.
It's new that people are talking about it, but I think, you know, for me in my workplace, you can't say anything. You wouldn't win anyway. It's hard.
I'm in the film industry. I'm an actress. I'm also work in production. And the 2 or 3 years ago was when the major celebrity, A-lister celebrity females were starting to arc. And some of them got blacklisted immediately. That's their form of retaliation. There's a few of them that said something, and 2 or 3 of them, and they're not even making movies anymore because of that. So, but more came out, more started coming out. They take the punches, and then more come out, and then a group decided to come out. See, it makes more of an impact on the numbers. And then when this group came out, then these groups are like, oh, well, let's do it as a group, not individual, because it's more powerful, and that's why these things are coming out. Just like the victims are grouped, just like the perpetrators are grouped. All these guys hung out. So it's not like, hey, I'm gonna show you how to do it, right? You come over to my house, you fly with my plane, I'll show you the girls. This is how you do it, this is how you talk to them. They share, I mean, it's, you know? So because of the times that are changing and people are being more boisterous, and the economy, the way we're living now, it's we have to speak up, you have to say something.
I have a question for the attorney. How could you have a business and clause in that business saying, I'm going to do this?
It happens because the culture happens. Because, you know, I look at part of what this is not necessarily for the people in this room, it's for the children of the people in this room, the grandchildren of the people in this room. Sometimes current discussions have no impact on what's going on now, or there's simply beginnings discussions. To answer your question, it was not unusual that companies would put in various clauses to protect people. Now again, very few people even knew they existed. Very few people even knew that Congress had defense funds to pay for the problems of some of the lawmakers. They existed because the culture allowed it at the time. Now that it's being brought to the attention, there's an outrage, there's an upheaval. My question, and I take a very aggressive approach to this, maybe because my background, I was a trial attorney, and maybe being aggressive is part of what I did, or what I do. I take a very aggressive stance on this. This is what's so now. How do you prevent that from happening now, in the future? Now, Harvey Weinstein's, they're going to come and go, the Kevin Spaceys are going to come and go, and as we both know, this has nothing to do with gender, male or female. Males have taken on, young boys have had these sexual problems with their superiors like Spacey and some of the other ones. So it's really gender neutral to some extent. Preponderance of females, but it's gender neutral as a problem. You get rid of those clauses. They're not going to happen again. Why? Because there's too much attention that's being put on that now. But my question is, based on what I was saying before, what happens when the attention dies? What happens when this is no longer a celebrity issue? And I have every belief that the celebrities are 150% involved in this. But as we all know, things change with time. News changes by the minute. When it's no longer a public issue, when it's no longer in the news, what's going to happen? Will somebody look at a Harvey Weinstein in the future, or a Kevin Spacey? Will anyone challenge this? I look at this Me Too movement as Me Too and my children and grandchildren. I have my youngest grandchild, or my youngest female grandchild is 13. Her name is Kylie. I see Kylie very aware of this. It's interesting to me because when I was 13, I was almost aware of nothing. Some people would say, even at my age, I'm still aware of it. But I remember my 13 and her 13. She's aware of it. It's an issue that she talks about. We talked about this last week because I knew I was coming here. And I was amazed how much of an issue, how she sees it as a 13-year-old, what she thinks about it. What I'm starting to see, or at least with her, is a much more aggressive protection. This is wrong. If it happens to me, I'm going to stop it. If someone comes up to me, I'm going to stop it. If someone says dirty jokes or things around a water cooler, we don't have water coolers anymore, around the Keurig, I'm going to stop it. The espresso. That's what I look at it. But that was a long way of answering the question. How did it happen? Because nobody knew it was happening, and the man that ran the company wanted it in there. And the man who ran the company knew what he was doing. That's how those things happen.
I have a question. So, I think #MeToo and harassment could be more than, rape, obviously, and sexual. There's all kinds of different bullying, abuse, verbal abuse, mental, all of these things. One of the things that I've experienced, especially with having young women or young girls, is that a lot of times victims don't speak up or say anything because the typical response, she'll get back, but he's such a good guy. He says hello to me every morning. We eat lunch together. He couldn't possibly do that. So the women feel discredited, and they start having people look at them like they're liars, or they're troublemakers, or So I think I would hate to even venture what the statistics are on how often it doesn't get reported, because we'll never know it doesn't get reported. My question is, for young ladies especially, you might not even know if you're a victim. You might not even be sure if that feeling that you have or that experience that you had that felt wrong makes you truly a victim. What would be your suggestion if you're A, not sure if something's happened to you, and B, what is the best approach to take at that time to preserve either the situation or, whatever it was to occur, that should you figure out what to do with it, to best be able to say, okay, yes, I documented the time, I documented the place. You know what I'm saying? Like, does anybody have anything input as far as how to, number one, figure out if you're a victim, and then preserve what happened to you so that you don't have to wait till the next time to be ready, to defend yourself or to, have the facts ready?
May I use the computer to show something before we get to your
Absolutely.
question?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me show something on the computer screen real quickly. But I don't want to use this though. Google is the answer to everything, right? So I think a part of the answer is a lot of young females, and we know that males could be victim survivors also, but a lot of females that walk into my office oftentimes don't even know what rape is. And at my previous institution, I would say that 75% of my caseload revolved around sexual assault, rape, harassment. So let's look at Google real quickly. When we put in rape, what do you see? How will you describe these images?
Obvious.
Aggressive.
You see hands,
Always see hands.
aggressive,
Yeah.
dark, right?
Smothering.
They're hiding.
Smothering,
Shame.
shame,
Violent.
violent.
It's always the victim.
Okay. Does it, would,
It's overt, all you're seeing is what's in front of you, you're not seeing behind.
right. With the word rape, if you didn't know that I put in the word rape for the search, would the word rape come to mind at all in looking at these images? No, right? So let's say we put in sexual assault. What do you see?
Nothing.
Right? It's similar. It's just a lot of stats, a lot of what do you call it? Posters, words, right? Okay, so what I'm about to show next may be what is graphic. So some of you may want to look away. So let's say we put in violence against women. Right? It's a little bit more graphic. Right? You see the bruises, you see it, the pictures, the graphics are more intense. Okay?
You see the mouth, the cover, so they're still not sticking out.
The cover, okay. Let's say when we put in murder, right? And this is gonna be pretty graphic. You see it, you get an idea what murder is, right? But not when you put in rape, not when you put in sexual assault. A lot of the topic doesn't get talked a lot about. And this is 2018. And this is the images, what social media is showing what sexual assault, what rape is. So no wonder why females or girls or boys, guys, men, women don't know what rape is. Right? How can you report something that you don't know? How can you know that something is wrong when you don't even know what's happening? Right? So part of it, for me, is a lot about education. During the first couple sessions of my therapy, a lot of it revolves around educating my clients about what rape is, what sexual assault is, what the legal definition is, what their definition is, and refer them to different resources. So for example, to the police department or victim services, to attorneys, so that they can learn more about the definition, learn a little bit more and make a little bit more sense about what happened to them, and have a term, a definition, a terminology, the vocabulary to describe what they went through. So education is the key, and I'll leave it to the rest of the panel.
I also wanted to touch a little bit on the blame that you mentioned and the victim blame that comes from the peers, and also the blame that a lot of women feel. One of the things that I do is we offer a course for women on sexual assault resistance, and the vast majority it is deconstructing the socialization that women get growing up and addressing that blame component, because we know from studies that when women experience, or when women blame other women for what happened to them, or blame themselves, they're actually at greater risk for sexual violence. I have some stuff behind this, but I'm wondering if any of you can take a guess as to venture why that's the case. Why someone who blames another woman for what happened to them, why are they themselves at greater risk?
Because they don't think it'll ever be there, that it won't happen. That you are strong enough to control your situation.
Yes, you assume that what the other person did, they must have done something stupid. It's the fallacy of the just world theory. If this person did something where now they're being harassed or they're being raped, it's because of something they did. I have to believe it's not going to happen to me because I'm a smart person, I'm a strong person, I'm a bold person. No one is ever going to mess with me, and this helps me with my belief that I can get through the world, the illusionary glow, right? So one of the things that we do in the program is really sit through what are these experiences actually like? What are the emotional barriers that people actually face? And we get women in the program to actually identify with this could be you. You've experienced these exact same emotions, you've experienced these exact same barriers to the resistance as everybody else has. And we work on reducing victim blame among the women, and also on reducing that self-blame, because when you can reduce that blame component in society among women and also among men, you do empower resistance in that case, and you empower the ability to report.
You know, I would like to see, as part of a mandated curriculum in grade school now, I guess it's called something else again. My age comes forward when I start not even knowing whether it's grade school, middle school, or whatever. But in the younger years, this type of course study should be mandated in a curriculum. When I was growing up, they used to have the civics courses and stuff like, but at some point in time, there was a discussion about how you treated other people. It's not there anymore. And I think that young girls start to suffer very, very early because there is no discussion about the value of a young woman, the value of a young girl, the value of an older woman. These things are never discussed when they're young anymore. You have to almost leave it to what are they seeing at home. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family where my father and mother treated each other with great respect. And I saw my father treat everyone with great respect.
Key word,
And
respect.
And maybe that was something I saw. But things have changed. So how do you get back to seeing what you need to see or teaching what you need to see? I think it's terrific that these type of forums, and I'd like to see these forums in grade school. I think they should be in grade school. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just was wondering how you all feel about what just happened, last November, last year. I mean, we have a grab him by the blank president and the Billy Bush tape I'm talking about. And so is it getting better? I mean, do you think it's better since last November when that came, or October, I guess that came out, something like that? Are we getting better? Are we able to look at it? Because we still voted for the president. And when I say we, I'm not including myself.
I have a good response to that. So I started this work back in 2014, around the time that the Obama administration, headed by Joe Biden, initiated the Dear Colleague letter mandating sexual assault education in universities.
Right.
And that was really a government-sponsored movement for a very long time. There's a lot of funding and a lot of research that was going behind it. And while it's incredibly discouraging when we see trends like that happening that seem to be going in the opposite direction, what's encouraging to me is the Me Too movement, in that the public has said, no, we're not going to drop this. Maybe we have a government that's no longer behind it, and we're not getting the public or the government support to go behind this issue, but we're taking the mantle ourselves now. We're going to do something about it. So while there is a lot of discouraging things happening, I think the movement is picking up on its own now, and people are starting to take that mantle on their own. And we're seeing that happening more so in our households, rather than it being programs that are being initiated from the top down. We're seeing a bottom-up movement. We had a whole march of 5 million women, right, saying like, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. And now we're having a movement that's been sustained for months with the Me Too movement that isn't dying down. And hopefully won't for quite a while. I hope we continue to see the movement going through.
Great, encouraging.
I believe we have a question here.
I do. You had mentioned, starting education for our daughters about this in elementary school. What about the sons? Because these women aren't going around going, hey, harass me, I want some attention, but you never once mentioned the boys. What about educating our boys to become men, to respect women?
I'll just respond because I had mentioned that before. That's where I want the course to be. It's for the boys. They're the ones that have to learn this. It's the girls that have to learn that they are special and they are empowered, but it's the boys who become men have to know that they are special, they are powerful, they are to be venerated, they are to be understood, and there's not to be any more of this type of action. The boys absolutely need that. That's where I think the education is. That's where you nail it. That's where you hit it. You have to start when they're 6, they're 7, they're 8. And you have to hope that what they're seeing is home, that what they see home is illustrative of what they're being taught in school. Because obviously if they're being taught in school that this is what we need to do, this is what you have to do, this is how you have to respect women. Of course, if they go home and they see their mothers beaten up, belittled or badgered, that's very, very difficult. But I believe, just as you're saying, not excluding the little boys, it has to be inclusive, specifically and pointed toward little boys.
I'm also really glad you're bringing that up because the younger you go, the more effective prevention education is. And with young boys, it's not only teaching respect for women, it's also creating a new model of masculinity for young men, for young boys. And having a masculinity that embraces emotional connection between young men and between young men and young girls, where men can be in touch with their emotions, where they can express their emotions to other women and be in touch with not only their emotions, but the emotions of others, and embracing that emotional intelligence is a quality that is valuable for everyone. And also providing models of masculinity that enable friendships between boys and girls, because right now we have very siloed ways that we encourage play among boys and girls, and really creating equity and equality in how we encourage children to engage with each other. And then also teaching both boys and girls the basic concepts of consent from a very young age. You can do that with little things like when you're tickling a child and they say stop, you stop, until they say no, I want you to do it again. And they'll have you tickle, oh stop, and maybe it's coming up with a safe word, like what word really means stop for you, and playing in that type of way. Teaching children of, hey, when someone wants to come up to you and demand a kiss, like an older adult, you don't have to go kiss them. Your body is your own. There's other options. Maybe you can say, if you don't want to kiss them, you can give them a high five, but you're not required to go hug your great aunt that you're not comfortable hugging, because we teach children your body's not your own. Your body, like other people, have the right to tell you what you can do with your body. So giving children that model of ownership over themselves is something really important that you can teach both boys and girls from a young age.
To insert on that, it's not just a gender thing, because I'm lesbian. It's in any format. I mean, it's girl, boy, 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 girl, girl, boy, boys, everybody. It doesn't matter. It's just individualism. It's human thing. It's a human thing, and it's the human species needs to learn to respect each other. Bottom line, they need to love. They need to respect, and these social behaviors that have been accepted from the past are slowly changing, and they will change as long as everybody does it together. It needs to be taught and developed, period.
I have a question as it goes back to what Mr. Baker said, and I think one of the questions from out here, because when it dies down in Hollywood, when it's no longer in the news and the headlines, as a community, right here in Palm Beach County, what is it that we can do? Because do we need to, talk to our government officials? Like we had to, do workplace training when it came to race relations, because when race was an issue back in the day, we had to do that. Is this something that really, because just based on the comment, it's still happening now. Locally, it's not in the news necessarily, but it still happens. So what initiatives as a community can we take to start to address change in the workplace? I know that the campus, and I commend you all for having things in place, but I don't know that the workplaces are really taking it as serious as it needs to be taken, that we may need some type of intervention to require certain training, because you still have these people in key positions in government and big business that may be saying, it's not going to happen to me and I'm not going to get caught. So what can we do on a local level or state level to implement change so we can start to have some
we have to disregard the celebrity because it is gonna die. As good as these people are, they have their own lives too. And to some extent, no matter how good they are and what they're doing, they're insulated from this. To some extent, they're now insulated from it. They have their own protection mechanism now. That's not gonna happen to them again. How it gets implemented, we have to start demanding. There are only 5 states now, I believe, that have mandated employer training on sexual harassment. It has to start on, I'm sorry?
Is it just 5
I
states?
believe just 5 that mandated, okay? It has to start at the federal level. There has to be, the laws have to be further illustrative. They have to be mandated. They have to be implemented, and they have to be tested. They have to be tested. But again, because my approach tends to be more aggressive in terms of how I would want to deal with this. I want people to be held accountable, and I want it to start now. The question coming up about the president in November and the Billy Bush, the taping, notwithstanding politics or whether you believe or not, it's abominable that anybody would do that. I don't care who it is. It was abominable what Clinton did, Bill Clinton. LBJ, before a lot of these people's times here, had a reputation. Franklin Roosevelt, they're supposed to be held accountable. If this is bad behavior, they're not to be elected. Frankly, that's what got Ray Moore not elected in Alabama. People raised a stink there. He never thought he was going to lose. It shows the power that people really have when they want to do something. That gets back here. If all of us want to do something, we're going to have to force the issue. Locally, to council people, to mayors, we're going to have to mandate these laws are respected. They're going to have to be tested in court. Over and over again. They're going to have to be stung. How do you test it? How do you win? When it starts to cost people money.
Perseverance. You gotta persevere, you just keep going, keep doing it.
That's just my internal, I mean, that's how I saw things done, is when they're tested and when someone had to pay, or when someone's reputation got hung up to dry. That's how I think things happen. If you can educate, and if you can change and inflict punishment, not just send them to rehab for 20 minutes. To me, that's not punishment. I want them fired. I also want an HR that's reflective of what's going on. I want a CEO that comes and says, if there's harassment in my place, you don't go to HR anymore. You come to my office. You tell me what happened. And I'm going to fire that person if it's true. You got to get accountability here, or we're going to lose momentum. And it's, again, and I don't want to hog this, and I'm sorry for doing that. I guess I get kind of impassioned by this, but how much in the news are you hearing about Hurricane Irma, the Hurricane Harvey, what went on in Puerto Rico, the islands that still don't have power? It's no news anymore. Key West is going to take years to rebuild. Is it on the news? The fires have ended in California. Now they're getting the mudslides. 2 weeks, you won't hear about that either. That's my fear. The news media, the news memory is minutes short. And when it's no longer an issue, when someone as powerful as Oprah or Reese Witherspoon or even Longoria, when they stop saying something, is anybody going to listen to them? That's my concern. I want it enforced, mandated, and I want education in the system now. Just as I see it.
I have a question. How did they bring the guy that did that to all of the Olympics just 4 years ago? I guess I was reading somewhere, Simone Biles just came out and said that.
Well, that's Larry Nassar. How did that go on for so long?
Yeah, but they convicted him, he got 60.
He didn't make, it's not that he convicted, he pled guilty. He never went to trial.
Okay.
He never went to trial. I would have, If I had prosecuted when I was a prosecutor, I would not have accepted a plea. I want him to go to trial. I want 24 young women, although it's difficult for them to testify. I want 24 women, or 34, to let the public know what he did, because Larry Nassar, in a year, is going to be forgotten. The only thing that makes you happy about that is Larry Nassar will not last in prison. He's got 5 years, possible. He'll be done. They'll carry him out on a cart. But Nassar never went to trial. These girls' stories are simply anecdotes. They're not testimony. I want that testimony to be out there. I want it to be heard, what he did. Because again, just like the pictures that you just showed, unless you know what it is, simply saying that or there was abuse of someone, it's words, it doesn't mean anything. I want them to hear, because that's the only way it's going to make a point. I'm really sorry.
I wish, for me, I've been on these types of panels many times, and it's just so refreshing to see men on this panel today, because typically it's mostly women or all women, so it's so refreshing to me to hear perspective and beliefs from a male's perspective.
Wish I was under different circumstances, but I'm glad.
I have a trivia question for you guys, though. Right? So, in what year did rape got redefined legally? That the government, administration, federal level took a look at rape and said, hey, this needs a newer definition to encompass race, to encompass gender, to encompass sexuality. 80s?
You get the right answer. If you're a student, you can get a
Anybody? A lot later than that. Recently. 2012. Under the Obama administration, that rape got redefined to encompass gender, sexuality, sex, right? The last time prior to that, when it was defined, was in 1923 or 1920s. I don't want to quote the exact year, 1920s, right? So we know that some of these definitions are so outdated, and currently, even as we're speaking, in some states, members, individuals from the LGBT community or identify themselves as such, cannot say that they've been raped even though they have, based on the definition, because typically, in some of these states, especially the southern ones and more conservative ones, rape is typically defined as an act by a man against woman, right? So that you cannot be raped man to man, woman to woman. So in some states, LGBT communities, individuals cannot say that they've been raped and therefore cannot press charges. So talking to your legislators, talking to your governor, talking to your Senate representative is very important to create policy changes.
Could I ask a question? Of a police officer, you give training, and what do you see as a result? By the way, is this even on when I'm talking to you?
No.
I didn't think so. Nobody's projected. I'm interested when you do the training. What do you see as a result? The women, I presume that this is a training for women and.
We have a lot, there's two different types. The first ones, and I'd say I've been training with RAD and being RAD instructor for about 14 years now. And as that time goes, when we first started, ladies got extra credit for certain classes they were in, professors would have extra credit. At the end of the third class, after we did everything, the following class, I would have them back in, because they enjoyed it so much. Now they were coming on their own because they wanted to make sure that they had everything down and things like that. The ones that got me the most is the second group that I had were actually survivors that had been sexually assaulted before. Out of that group, I would have people repeat come back because it was a way, if they got counseling or not, it was a way that they were actually fighting back for what happened to them years ago. So, and we all said the same thing, is it was great to see that because I would have these young ladies come back 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I had ladies that when they thought and got everything done, they would come to me and say, I don't need to come to class anymore. They would say, thank you. I can take care of myself. So it's huge for me to see the two differences. First of all, the ones that come in because I'm going to get extra credit, but they come back. And then the ones that go to my class because they have been assaulted before, and talking to some of those ladies, and they blame themselves for what happened to them. And I've always said that. Dude, I don't care. Like I said, I've been a cop 27 years. When a young lady or a person says no, that's what they mean. If they say don't do it, don't do it. We go back to the respect. When I first started law enforcement in the early 90s, domestic violence was not a arrestable offense without the victims wanting to prosecute. They had to testify. When I was there watching a young lady with a black eye, busted jaw, saying, I need you to sign this paper so I can take your husband to jail.
Holding the ice, saying nope.
Nope, you're not taking my man away from me. I did something wrong. I didn't have dinner done on time. All I could do was write the report, forward it to the state attorney's office. And I'll use an example that I do in the grad class. I had a young lady that went from pushing to shoving to a black eye to busted ribs. The last time I saw her was she was in a hospital bed. They did not know if she was going to make it because both her lungs were punctured from broken ribs. She had just had her jaw wired shut from where he slammed her into a concrete wall and broke her jaw. Her eye was just about out of socket from that impact. And you go, it takes so long for people to realize, and then the law started changing. But I had to go each time to the state attorney's office and say, look, if we don't do something about this, this woman is going to die. Never once did she say it was her fault. I mean, his fault. It was always her fault. I said, nobody deserves this kind. And it's just like with sexual assault. Nobody deserves something to be done against their will and that they don't want done. And I reiterate, I tell ladies, the young ladies, oh, I shouldn't have been dressed like that, or I shouldn't have got that intoxicated. Or I have one better for you, and I hate to say it, you talk about the society itself, their girlfriends saying, you caused it. You shouldn't have been there in that situation. You shouldn't have done this. And we go back to that is society, their friends saying that, now they start shaming themselves, believing that it's their fault. And we've got to change it. I've got a 23-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old daughter. And like you said with your grandchildren, my girls, I'm sorry, but they know more about violence in the world today than anybody else. They both take karate. They both fight with dad because dad makes them do it so they know how they can get out things to empower themselves. And no, you only are touched when you want to be touched. If not, you take care of the situation. And I know it sounds mean and cruel, but that's the way the lady's got to be. Y'all respect yourself, respect your body, and know that it's the person, when you say no, that's what it means. You know, like I said, and I apologize because I get aggravated with this because it's something that I've seen time and time again in trying to get young ladies to realize that it's not their fault, that it's somebody else's fault, And they, a lot of times take it back when I, as a man, go in and start talking to them, don't want to tell me because I look like, or I am deep voiced like a person that they committed a crime. And trying to get to them, I will do everything in my power to help you, and law enforcement will. We need some assistance, you know, and to get them to open up is, and it hurts me because I walked through and I've done it before, you know, knowing, and I think, Ben, there's nothing that you can do. You've got to let them realize that they have the power to take care of it. You know, once they get in power, then we're great. They can go forth and do what they need to do. I think there was a question earlier. The state
Before you go there, Lieutenant Eric, I ask you to speak into the mic because we're recording.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, y'all can't hear me?
No, I'm recording this
Oh, I'm
session.
sorry.
Thank you.
There was a question earlier about how long the time frame. State of Florida, and I'm saying this as far as what records are kept. If a young lady feels like that she has had sexual assault against her, they can go to the hospital. They can get a rape kit done. The state of Florida or law enforcement has to hold it for 1 year. So if she decides within that 1 year that she wants to prosecute, that we have evidence that we can go ahead and send to the labs. Okay, there was a big deal about that, 13, 14 months ago, where they said we had so many rape kits that were set off to the side that we need to take care of. But a lot of that was that the victims did not ever want to prosecute. So that's the reason why they did not get. We couldn't do anything with them without their consent and their want to follow through. But that's a year. But now, with the actual charging of, I'm wanting to say it's 15 years. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's 15 years that you're allowed, you know, to come back and actually bring charges against somebody.
Statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations. You might not have the evidence anymore, but you still have, but in that, within that year, yes, you do have that evidence.
So in a workplace setting, if somebody is harassing you or in that gray area before anything physical or whatever happens, you can go to your HR department and report if this person speaks to me inappropriately, this person, you know, on a college setting, like we are here on a campus, when you have young ladies who feel like somebody is disrespecting them or it may be heading in that direction, what would you recommend for them? Because there's that time, like, it's too early to say something's happened, but again, how do you go about trying to stop it before it happens?
Yeah.
You know, you've already had some.
First of all,
Didn't we just have a training that someone from your department did, John, what is that law?
Eiffel.
Okay,
Okay. The Clery Act.
Clary.
Yes.
I'd like to just piggyback on what you just said. I'm a director of career services, and I'm sending young women into the workplace for the first time. And they don't necessarily know that they're being harassed or they're being set up to be harassed. What are some of those early signs in the workplace that they can look for?
I can speak to research on early signs of someone who might be at risk for perpetration in general. Like people that, when you know those risk cues that you can look out for. So persistence is one. So someone who doesn't seem to take no for an answer, regardless of whether or not the context is sexual. Someone who is, or I'm gonna have to try to remember these off the top of my head, I'm sorry. So we have persistence, hostility and anger. So this again, it could be in a sexual situation or not. Someone who might be explosive in a situation, especially someone who might use hostile language towards women, such as bitches, hoes, or dehumanizing language. Oh, this is a blank right up here. Hold on. Now I can put the others. I do this all the time. It's the same thing. So there's one about power and control. So someone who seems to be a bad loser in situations where like they're overly competitive, they need to have control over the situation. These are cues that you can look out for. Sherilyn, do you remember any of these? We went through the whole training together.
Yes, but I don't remember either. Seems like something you should have in your purse all the time.
I usually, you know what, this is usually off the top of my head, and I write them down in classes all the time. I think I'll be like to get into them right now. If I don't get to them, or the other two, I'll grab the microphone back, but I'll go ahead and pass it on for a minute. Early warning signs that people can look for.
And I would just add to your list that a lot of times, most of the times actually, a lot of the sexual harassment are verbal. It doesn't have to be physical, right? So to speak to the former question about what can college students do on a college campus, we do have an office for that. Title IX office. I think the main office is in Boca Raton, and they can call the office if they want to, or shoot them an email. So we do have responses on college campus. The CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, is one of the few entities on a college campus where we are not required to report if a student comes to us and say, hey, I think that I'm a victim of a crime, or I've been sexually assaulted, that based on federal regulations, laws, that anyone who works for a university, minus a field entity such as CAPS, are required to report. So that students, there should never be a time where a student feels unsafe on college campus, whether they live here or just taking classes here.
Is this talked about in orientation, freshman orientation? Are students made aware that these resources are available to them, and when and why and how should they use them?
Yeah, so I'll let Sarah talk about that, but before I pass over the microphone, I do want to emphasize that for those who are making referrals or think about coming to CAPS, the one point I want to emphasize is that if ever there's a student that is kind of a little bit confused, don't really know what to do, don't really know if they've been assaulted, raped, what the next step is, if they've been harassed, because we don't have to report, they can just come to the Student Counseling Services for a consultation. They do not have to be an ongoing client, and they don't have to seek therapy. They can just simply provide consultation, put them to the right resources.
And yes, during orientation, students do remember this, and in compliance with the Campus Save Act, all students are required to take a course called Think About It. This is a course by Campus Clarity, and it talks about consent, alcohol risk cues, and alcohol safety, and bystander intervention for students.
Another thing that just crossed my mind, and I thought about this before, is here we have great college that has programs and all of these things, and we're talking about HRs and making them more aware. What happens in small towns, small businesses, where these resources are just not available? Who's going to help out some young woman that's going through this in some small town someplace, in a business that has no HR, with a boss that couldn't care less? What's going to empower her? It's great, and it goes back to something that I guess I said earlier. Unless you get stricter law and then enforcement of that law, unless you're going to get someone that's going to suffer severe penalty, jail time, or dollar amount, all the programs that are wonderfully put together that we have available, and the training, if it doesn't go down and it doesn't end up in a small town in Montana someplace, who's going to protect them? Where are they going to be protected? They don't have a university. They don't have the resources. There's no such thing as HR. I mean, how many businesses really even have an HR? The HR is the guy that hired you. That's the problem. The problem is you have a level, and then you have a big level where you have unprotected people.
and you have people that are employing them that fear nothing. What's going to grab them? That's probably where I come from in terms of a perspective, because that's the concern. When there's nobody to watch out for you, how are these people going to watch out for themselves? It's wonderful we have panels and we have programs and self-defense programs. How's that going to trickle down to mainstream? That's where I worry about it. It's just not going to happen unless we do something about it.
Yeah, the harasser needs to be the harasser needs to be stopped, and he or she needs to know that there's outcomes to their consequences of their behavior and their actions. You have to be accountable for your own actions as a human being. Whatever you do, whatever you decide, you have to be accountable because you decided to do that on your own free will. And like what he said, it's true. There needs to be a mechanism where you get burnt because you're going to do something like that. It has to get to that point because we live in a society that we're so desensitized about everything that these things need to be honed on and reminded over and over and beaten in the head on the perpetrators. You know.
I think what's great.
I just want to remind the students that if you ask a question or comment, that you can get a viewable it's on us.
I have a hand. Can we get a mic from up here? Sure.
Yeah.
We'll get a mic first.
So I have two questions, but they're related to each other. One, how do we encourage men who have also experienced sexual assault to go seek, not just report it, but also to seek therapy, since, there's not just a stigma against going to therapy, but there's also a stigma against men going to therapy because it's not really seen as men are supposed to express their emotions or get raped in the first place. And then second off, can men get rape kits? Because I've only heard of women getting rape kits, and I've never heard of a man getting a rape kit, so I'm curious if anyone knows.
Yes, the rape kit is done by a certain nurse, and yes, they can. It can be either gender. The swabs that they use and things like that, it can be taken for either or. And like you said, I think there's a lot more men being raped that are not reported because of just what you said, the stigma of a man being a victim of that.
And I think that's a cultural thing too. I mean, you grow up in a culture where men are supposed to be a particular way, and this type of reporting, this type of men don't feel comfortable doing that. It's one of the problems that we men have. That we just don't feel comfortable telling anybody that we're less than, or that someone assaulted us. Everybody has their own story. I was never sexually assaulted, but I remember when I was 11, and I remember the bullying, and I remember having that situation, and I remember going to my father and saying, what am I going to do? I was 11. And the guy that was doing the bullying was 17, still in grade school, a real achiever. And I asked my father, what am I supposed to do? My father said, well, what do you think you're supposed to do? I said, I don't know. He said, you're going to have to take care of it. I said, Dad, how do I take care of it? My father was a boxer in college. He said, I'm going to show you. And it was very quickly pronounced and then practiced. He comes within 2 feet of you again. You turn around and you hit him right here. He did, I did, and that was the end of it. But I will tell you, it took me a great deal of time to tell my father. that I was undergoing or experiencing that thing. And I remember my father was a very, very sensitive man saying to me, why did you wait so long? Because I was embarrassed. I wanted to believe when I grew up the He-Man was John Wayne. I wanted to be John Wayne. I didn't want to be Woody Allen. No, I didn't want, so it took me time. But I remember my father asking me that. When I have clients now, especially abused women, older senior women, and I say, well, why did it take you so long? It's this embarrassment issue. We are a society that worries about embarrassment. We don't want to be embarrassed. But it's this culture, it's this type of thing. Men are experiencing all kinds of things going on. But they have nobody, they feel they have nobody to talk to. Even when you're married, sometimes you feel you can't talk about these type of things with your own wife because it makes you feel less than. I think women have a better opportunity to be empowered sometimes than men do. Women are open. My wife would say women are smarter than men, and I have to agree with her. Women are open to this type of thing. Men shut down. They don't want to be open to this. It makes them feel less than. Goes back to when you start to teach young boys in the 6th or 7th grade that you have to feel good about yourself, you have to feel good about other people, you have to respect them, and you have to respect yourself. If something happens to you, it's okay to tell someone. It's a cultural change that's going to happen. I didn't grow up in that change. But I think there's an opportunity now with you all here to not only experience it yourself, but again, I look at this as education that trickles down. I want my grandchildren, I want my children, I want their grandchildren and children. I want them to get this. How many people watch did anybody see the series Mad Men? That's what took place in the 60s and 70s when I started to get out in the workplace. You look at that and you're horrified. That's what happened. It was tolerated, drinking, groping, saying things. We've changed, we've come a long way, but again, it's going to be, how are we going to make someone accountable for their actions?
And in terms of, I'll speak shortly. In terms of therapy, our number one referral source is actually from students. It's not from faculty, it's not from staff, it's not from administration, it's actually from students. So if you could maybe I'm feeling a little bit biased because of my profession, but talking goes a long, long way. I think it's a catalyst in creating cultural change. So just being able to talk to your friends about, your family about it, and walking them to the counseling center, accommodate them even. That we oftentimes we have students walking their friends to our waiting room, and we have people waiting for session to end to meet their friends there so that they don't feel alone in the situation or in the circumstance. So for me, talking goes a long way, and the buy-ins I get from students are from other students. If one student tells their friends, hey, like I saw a tweet and you should go, chances are the student will follow up with that. But if I get a professor or a teacher or a staff member that makes that recommendation, it's not as effective. Sometimes it is, but it's more effective coming from student, coming from a peer. So one of the ways to reduce stigmatization against counseling, especially for men.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's a learned development, it's a perspective.
Can you speak into the mic over the phone?
It's a learned development, like what they're saying is, to add to it was, it's development. And once you share your perspective with your peers, you can see how you're thinking, if your process of thinking is the same way or not. Because everyone's gonna have everything coming from law enforcement, coming from the court, everything's always presented differently, in different perspective. People are gonna take things differently. I mean, you and I can experience the same experience in the same room, but prospectively we're gonna look at it differently because of our learned development and experiences that we've had, and our biases and our things that we have that made us where we were at that moment. So, it goes back to what she's saying. You know, when you share your perspective with your peers, then you listen to everybody in a little powwow, and then you realize, oh, maybe they're right, or maybe I'm right, or maybe I'm wrong. And that's how you share with each other, you help each other out. It's a learned development with the social change. It's a real big social change. It's dramatically changed in just 20 years. I mean,
Anybody else? Questions?
Just say something about workplace.
Yeah.
Someone made a comment there.
What do you do in the workplace when things happen? I will tell you one thing that, because of my experience, it just is having been a prosecutor for a lot of years before I did this, accuracy of reporting. If there's something that happens, and it doesn't have to be a specific assault, it can be an assault of words, it could be a harassment, document it. You have a diary, be very, very specific and clear. Dates, times, what happened, when it happened. One of the problems in the Bill Cosby case a year ago is that the victim gave too many different stories. Part of the problem was she wasn't interviewed right away. Part of the problem was she didn't report it right away. But it was seized upon by the defense lawyer. Everybody knew it happened, but again, as someone said before, in a court of criminal law, you have to prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. As a prosecutor and then as a former defense lawyer, you know how difficult that is? It's very difficult, beyond a reasonable doubt. You raise one red flag, that's a reasonable doubt. Document what happened in the workplace. Document it to the I and T. And if you have a close friend, share the story with the friend. I want another witness that heard the story, that read the story, that saw what took place when the person that this happened to related it to. That's another advantage I think that women have over men. Women have a lot of friends. They are people that they can be comfortable with. Men have guy friends. You know, we go to a sports bar. It's the team, what did they do yesterday? Do we ever discuss feelings? You know, it's almost a Saturday Night Live joke. You don't. But women do, and that's an advantage here. Because if it's reported accurately, and if you tell your closest friend what took place, there's a chance that you get some change here.
And just an FYI, that you can get a rape kit without having to file a report. So you get the rape kit and decide later whether or not you want to file a report, and it's free of charge.
And just in case anyone was curious about those last two factors, I did look them up. It was acceptance of interpersonal violence, so this might be someone who's making jokes about hitting being an acceptable solution, or uses very violent language when talking about sex, and sexual entitlement was the last one.
So we just have a few more minutes, so we want to get into some last few questions.
Going back to what you said about some of the recent high-profile cases that have come out in media, how do you think we should go forward in opening a discussion, but without kind of creating a sensationalized view of kind of using women's trauma as just this way to get, clicks or attention or whatever have you? Because I've seen a lot of situations where it's expected of women to kind of be open and talk very, very publicly about situations that have happened to them. It's not an excellent place to be,
Small groups, local level. You don't have to be on television, but you can tell groups that I like the idea. I mean, people have book clubs. You have groups of people that get together to discuss these problems, discuss the issues, make them issues that stand forward. They don't necessarily have to be in the newspaper, or they don't have to be on television. They don't have to be sensationalized. But you're getting the word, it comes down to the same level. How are you going to grassroots this to make this really worth something? How is it going to be more than simply a celebrity cause? I've been around long enough longer than a lot, longer than the panel. They probably added up all of them, longer than the panel. And I have seen so many celebrity causes in my lifetime that come and go. I haven't seen as many important causes as this one. My concern goes back to what I started. How are you going to create that? You create it on a local level. You get a group of people, you get discussion groups, you get open forums. They can be in people's houses. But you make this stick. Let me tell you one thing, and again, I can only say this. When you're an old person, you can say things, so I'm going to say something right now. This is your time now. This is your time. If you lose this momentum, you're never going to have it back again. Because it's never going to be the celebrity that's going to create this again. This is your time. And my concern, and I'm throwing this out just as someone that doesn't want to see this get lost, don't lose this opportunity. Because once it's gone, it's like on the internet. Once you could send, and don't come back. Keep it going. It's just as I see it.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. If anyone has any last questions or last comments they want to say, please feel free to do so. And we'll wrap up and you can. Yeah.
I would like you to talk about the groups that we're going to be doing every couple of weeks, because this is an opportunity for the students, if they want to participate in this kind of thing, the discussion groups.
All right, so before we get you, quick.
I'm adamant about that because we're recording this and we want to make sure we get all of these good tidbits on tape. Could you ask that question again, please? Thank you.
I would like you to talk about the groups that we're going to be having every couple weeks, starting pretty soon, where it's just open discussion for whatever the students want to talk about. You can talk more about it because you've done more of the planning, so.
Thank you. So we're going to be having group discussions that are called Trending Topics Thursdays. And so it'll be 1 hour discussions where you can come and talk about anything related to wellness. So sexual assault or mental health, sexual health, anything along those lines. You can come ask a question, talk with your peers about it, ask us questions, and just kind of get to know more about what you want to know, and so that we can help provide for you better. And one more.
I have this kind of question. I mean, not a question. Okay. I don't know if this is part of the plan. One, I want to thank you all. The valuable information that you all have shared has been like phenomenal. I've learned something. I've gotten some great information from that. I ran out of paper. But what I would like to ask each one of you, starting with the lieutenant, if you would please, is to give us at least one of something for us to take with us. That you would like for us to take with us, because you've shared a lot of information for us to kind of absorb, but I would like for you to at least, each one of you, give us a takeaway that you'd like to have us have. Thanks.
As you give us a takeaway, I'm going to give you something. Thank you, Denise.
Are these football tickets, by the way?
We'll talk, Mr. Bear, okay?
Well, the main thing that I'd like to say is to let everybody know that they can control their destiny 99.9% of the time. You know, it takes respect. You give respect, you get respect. Expect respect. You know, the ladies, I love it, like I said, because teaching rad, I see them get empowered. I see the way people walk into the class and walk out of the class. And knowing that, like I said, now they have a different respect for themselves. And that's what everybody should come away with, in my opinion, is you gotta know respect is all bounds.
Top that.
Try to think. No, basically stand your ground. It feels bad inside, make it known. Don't fear yourself. You're fearing yourself by not saying anything. Who you're challenging? Yourself. Who's giving their own restrictions of how they're prospectively thinking? You can't lock yourself into one way of thinking. You have to open your mind. If it feels bad inside, you gotta say something. You stand your ground. You have a voice. You count. You're there. You exist. That's bottom line.
I'm just gonna add to that because I think that was very well stated. Allow yourself to no longer be victims. No one's a victim, they're a volunteer to be a victim. Don't volunteer to be a victim. Teach your kids and your grandkids that. We're no longer volunteering to be victims. We're gonna stand up, we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna make someone pay for it that should pay for it. We're gonna make a complaint when a complaint is necessary to be made, but we're not gonna stand for this any longer.
And I would say that if you could take anything away from today's meeting, panel discussion, please know that you're not alone. That especially when you're a college student on a college campus, that you're never alone. Resources are available. Help is there, but we don't know unless you tell us. So please approach someone and never ever feel like you're going through something all by yourself without any resources or help.
And I think my take-home message is, right now we're encouraging everyone to speak up. I would also encourage everyone to listen and believe and support. One of the ways we're going to keep this movement going is by avoiding moments where we say, this sounds legit to me, but this one doesn't. Remember, your experience isn't reflective of everybody else's experience, and be open to hearing those experiences from both men and women of the trauma that they might have gone through, and then amplify their voice along with your own.
Thank you. Let's give the panel a hand. On behalf of FAU, Sherilyn and I are giving you parting gifts. Thank you so much for taking this time out of your busy schedule. We appreciate that, and you certainly have given us something to take away from here that we can share with our friends, our family, our students. This is so important. Thank you. Also, to our dear Chairman of the Link Committee Program, Larissa, thank you. And to our Madam President of the Women's Chamber Foundation, our fearless leader. This woman roped me into this. It wasn't too hard, you know, being an educator. And also, Miss Jackie, I love you dearly. Michelle, could you come see me tomorrow? I'll have something for you. I missed one bag. Also, Chrissy, thank you so much for allowing me to do all of this and work on the schedule with Sherilyn. Sherilyn, thank you so much for reaching out from Boca.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you everyone. That concludes today's event. We do have a couple of tables outside. Please feel free to visit them, interact with them. We have student health out there. We have some information from Victim Services on campus and FAU Palm Beach County. So please feel free to go out there and then get the rest of the refreshments because we're all still there. So help yourself.
Also, students, the grad class is coming here in March. Make sure you take the class from Lieutenant Mary. I've taken it twice. And when it comes this year in March, I'm going again. It has certainly empowered me to defend myself.
Can I take it?
Well, and side note, yes, the grad class that the university offers is open to everyone. Free of charge. You don't have to be a student, staff. If you see it, if you go on the FAU/police, go through the service end of it, it shows you when the classes are coming up. The one for the Jupiter class is not up yet, but hopefully within the next 2 weeks, after next week, the Boca one, I should have it up on the board, okay?
And I'll share it with the women's chamber.
Maybe that's the rest of us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Look at you working.
But we're meeting at 11:30.